This year's Big League Cine Summit is brought to you by Planet 5D, Cinovate, DSLR Video Shooter, Jag 35, and Create Insights.
Okay, everybody, welcome to an unbelievable session today. We have with us August Bradley. Don't get it mixed up. It's not Bradley August. It's August Bradley. A lot of people get that backwards. If you've seen his work, and actually you have because you've seen the Summit's teaser, and his work is all through that, he's going to be presenting to us a lot of information about cinematic lighting, his approach to it, and all the pieces of the puzzle that he goes through to achieve some of the amazing looks that he is able to create. So, August, welcome aboard. We're so happy to have you on.
Hey, Aviv. I'm happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for making the time. I know that a lot of you guys that are just really killing it out there have so much work all the time. So we truly appreciate that you make the time to come and be part of this event. And
yeah, this is fun for me. I love this.
Okay, sweet. So you know what? I'm going to get out of the way a little bit. I'll be with you throughout asking questions because I'm sure I'll have a lot of questions. And I want you to take over. I got a little sneak preview, as I do with most people, on the presentation. So I'm very, very much looking forward to it. But it's all yours. Go for it.
Sure. I appreciate that. Thanks. So what we're talking about today is cinematic lighting. So the idea, and again, feel free to jump in. I want to make it more of a conversation.
Yeah, absolutely.
Talk about. So, but the idea is we're going to get into cinematic lighting, how to give it a dramatic flair, and how to have the lighting really complement the story, because fundamentally that's what it's about. Whether you're a director shooting for himself or a cinematographer working with a director, in any situation, you're there to support the story. So the first thing you really got to dig into is what is the concept? What are the ideas that the story is trying to convey? What are the moods that you need to convey to support that story? Is it a light, fun comedy? Is it a dark, scary horror movie? Is it a suspenseful thriller? In all these cases, the lighting can complement and enhance and further convey the ideas and the emotions of the story. So the idea is to use lighting as a tool, as a storytelling tool, not just a showy theatrical thing. Although there's a time and place if you're doing music videos, if you're doing fashion videos, there's a time to just do dramatic theatrical stuff too. But primarily we're talking about filmmaking and storytelling through cinema, and lighting as a really powerful tool to do that. So what I typically start out with is just studying the script, talking with the director if there is a director. If I'm the director, then I'm really thinking through what are the ideas we want to convey, what are the moods, what are the arcs, at what points does the mood change, what point does it get high and fast and exhilarating, at what time is it really slow or more introspective and contemplative, and how can lighting enhance that? How can we use this tool really as a character in a way, without necessarily drawing attention to it, but making it just give the whole a punch. The idea is the sum of the parts, not focusing on the individual parts when you're looking at a film. So we start with what's the mood concept. Then, with an understanding of that and how it might change throughout the time period of the piece, I'm going to look at the environment. I always start with the environment that I'm shooting in. And depending on the environment, there are going to be different needs or different priorities in terms of how I approach it. Okay. The big distinction is, is the environment, does it naturally in it have light that I want to use? Are there pieces, accent lights, ambient lights, lamps, fire, a candle, fireplace? Am I shooting on location where there is some light already on the set, or am I completely starting from scratch, perhaps on a soundstage, just lighting entirely with my team and my cinema lighting? So typically in my case, I like to work with real environments. That brings a lot of atmosphere, it brings a lot of production value when you're working on location at an environment that you're excited about. So in that case, you're going to have lights that are already there, built in. And I'm going to then set the exposure based on the existing light in the room. If I'm going onto just a clean set and I'm building it from scratch, then I'm going to start with the key light. Because if I'm building everything, I can start with the key light's the most important light. It's the optimal light. It's what's lighting your subject. And you can start by just shaping the light on your subject. And we'll get into that in more detail soon. And then you can build the background light at the same levels and at the appropriate ratios to the key light. But if you're going into a real living room or a nightclub or an environment that has light and you want to use that light, because if you go into a dramatic environment that has lighting and has lamps and has fireplaces or whatever, and you turn your lights on above it, it's going to wash all that out. You're going to lose all the mood and atmosphere. Everything you loved about the location, or a lot of it, could easily just be washed out and disappear. And if you start with the key light, you're going to inevitably want brighter light because these dramatic environments tend to be dimly lit. So if you start with the key light, it's going to be too bright. Then you're going to have to pump up light in the background. You're going to wash everything out. So I will start by setting up the camera, looking at the exposure, studying the waveform, studying the scope, studying the histogram, but also just eyeballing it. Make sure you have a monitor that's set up to be an accurate representation. It's well calibrated of the luminosity of the scene in the frame.
And this is August, all without your actors or characters in the scene at this point, right? You just want to just for the environment.
Yeah, I mean, if you had them, it wouldn't be a problem. But at this point, they'd just be waiting around.
Right,
so,
right. Yeah.
Certainly, if they're high-paid talent, you don't want to have them sitting around.
Right.
If your buddy is making a movie with you, then perhaps they'll be more patient.
Okay.
But not always.
Right. If you have enough food around, maybe. Yeah.
Yes, it is nice to have a person in it pretty soon. But for the very first look, really, you can just set the camera up, start wide, set up wide, and then you get tighter later. In terms of setting up your lighting, because you want to know the whole frame. It's harder to light a big wide scene, and as you get tighter, you can then push light in and you have more control because you can get closer to the subject. But generally, if you just start wide, especially for this stage, you'll be able to see the whole frame, assess the whole frame, get it to work in terms of the background. You're not worried about a subject here, you're just worried about a background exposure, and you'll determine the ISO you can shoot at. You'll determine whether you need NDs, although typically I shoot in dark environments, so I'm usually going wide and trying to get as much light in. Like I said, most of these environments that you want to use the light tend to be dimly lit, although not necessarily. It could be window light during the day in an interior, and then you're trying to see what the exposure is for that. But you might, in a case of window, you might be NDing windows. Or if there are lights outside of the frame, you can drop ND material. They come in rolls. ND just cuts the light without putting a color cast on it. And that's going to let you control that to some degree. But you're really focused on things in the frame at this stage. And what do you need to set the exposure for it to be able to capture it? Because if you cut too much light out, you're going to lose lamps. You're going to lose backlit ambient. So if you're not doing this, then I would start with the key light. And when we get into the key light, we would just flip these two.
Yeah, would you say, I think I heard from already a few cinematographers, one after the other, and those that are at your caliber, they say that, lighting their talent is actually the easier part. It's the setting. What do you think about that? Do you agree with that?
Sometimes it varies. I mean, it varies by situation so much. Typically, yes, because you're lighting one thing. But if you have 2 or 3 people talking, then it's actually tougher. Lighting one person's pretty easy. Lighting 2 people, especially if they're talking to each other, is a lot more difficult because you got to watch shadows. You can't optimally light either of them because typically you'd want to, and we'll get into this more, but you want to have the cameras here and the person's here. I don't know if the 3-dimensionality is showing up. You want to have typically what I'll do is a stronger light on the off side from the camera, maybe at 40 degrees. So there's a bit of a shadow. So if the camera is where the camera is on me now, the light would be coming from a little behind me and wrapping around this side of my face, and then this side would be going a little bit darker, in fact. Right. But you can't really do that as precisely when you have 2 people talking because they're blocking each other's light. Yeah. So you get more compromises. So with one person, yes, I would agree with that. With 2, and the more people you add in terms of a close conversation, the tougher it is to light each optimally.
Okay, yeah, sorry, didn't mean to get you off track.
No, that's a good point, though.
Yeah.
But the point that you're hinting at there, which is very true, is the environment can be by far the most complex part of the lighting because there you're shaping and molding, and you don't just want to wash the whole scene with light. Right. This is the most fundamental point. We'll get right to it. Yeah, you don't want to just wash the whole scene with light. I mean, this is done in commercials, and if you want to do something simple, you can just wash it in light and be done with it. But it's not interesting. I mean, light is interesting in contrast to the absence of light. So what I like to do in the mood that I typically go for in my images has this sense of shadows rolling in and out, and then highlights of light. And the light is drawing your eye and directing your eye and controlling your eye, and it's giving it a pop, and it's giving it an internal glow. It's this sense of having a light source from within, which we watch on screens that are backlit, which is wonderful. It's really, I think, an advantage over photography, which is when it's printed, because front light doesn't have that luminous glow, that sense of magic that we used to see as film flickering. But you still have that quality with these backlit monitors. It's lit from within, it radiates light. So there's an excitement to that, and something just really beyond what we see every day. It's a fantasy element that gives it this imaginary, atmospheric magic. It's really,
and not being afraid to let things go into the darks, into the,
yes,
right?
You want pockets of dark so that the light means something.
Right.
The light won't mean anything if everything is lit.
There you go. That's
Again, there are commercial clients that want that. I do a lot for ABC Family, and that's just bright.
Right.
But it's not the most interesting lighting. And if there are stories that make sense for, but there are most stories in which some contrast, some in and out, some battling of light and dark enhances the story and really fuels the emotional connection to the visuals. So we build the light. In building an environment, it also depends on how wide your lens is. A wide lens means you've got a lot to build. And so let's get into that. So you start by seeing what you have. You've got this lamp, you've got that lamp. Virtually always, it's better to have practicals turned on, which means lamps turned on. Things that are in the frame that will come across as backlit will usually look better turned on. However, some may be too bright, some may be too dim. You might change bulbs to make them brighter or dimmer so that they'll balance out with each other. One doesn't just glow while the other one is just barely perceptible. So you change bulbs to optimize that. That's working with what's already there. Then once what's there is sort of established, then you look at how you can enhance that. And this is still focused on the background if we're shooting in an environment that has its own internal lighting. Now I'll take little sometimes light sticks, little very small light heads, and stick them behind things. So you'll get a gradient glow coming out from behind it. It's really beautiful. It gives it texture, just little ones here and there. I have, I think, 6 little 250 mini moles that I use all the time. I mean, I run out of them all the time. And I have 6 of them. We'll just put them in little pockets. And there's smaller lights than that, little LEDs. The problem with LEDs is usually battery, and they run out of battery die. Don't be changing batteries.
That always gets us,
So just, if you can plug it in.
That's a huge tip right there, that the little pockets of light, hiding in certain places, that's a big takeaway right there.
Little accents. They're accent lights is what I call them. Just little accents. You don't want it to draw attention there, but it adds texture to this background and a richness and a depth. Typically, you want to have depth with the camera. So you have the subject in the foreground, maybe even something in front of the subject that's just blurry and you're shooting around and through or over. And then if you can have layers behind the subject, maybe you have a couch, then a fireplace, mantle with a wall, then the wall. If you can have different layers and put little accent lights that are different in each layer, so they separate from each other.
Yeah.
And one great way to separate is to light it from behind. So, so if there's a sofa and then 6 feet back there's a wall, put a light that's blocked by the sofa on the wall, and then the sofa, even if it's darker, you can have a glow around it.
Amazing.
Vignette off. You'll use the shape of the light you apply in these little accent lights is important in many cases, especially if you're lighting a wall. You shape it so it's, depending on the scenario, but typically round, pointed at a direction where you can see the fall off, and it creates a gradient from a highlight gently into darkness again, and it creates a bit of a glow around the subject in front of it.
Yeah, I love that. My goodness.
Yeah.
I'm just going to tell everybody right now, if they don't have a pen and pencil out, you can tell why you need to get one out real quick. Okay, go on.
Yeah, okay. So you're creating this texture and this mood in this environment. You just place it, and this could very well be the most time-consuming part of the project. Sometimes you don't have time. You do what you can.
Yeah.
Times you never have enough time. But you plan it out. This is where diagramming comes in help. This is where location scouting is really essential. I mean, I always, if at all possible, scout the location days or weeks before the shoot. And this is what I'm thinking about. What is the light that's already there? Are the windows I need to deal with? Do we need to block them and de them, or are they okay? What are the practicals, and where can I stick little accent lights?
Oh man, that's a nice
And
list
and
right
of
there.
course, yes, that's building the initial set
Yeah,
when you're
beautiful.
working with a location. Then you bring in the subject and the key light. The subject is going to, obviously this is what we need to light the best. And the subject should stand out and should be distinguished from the environment. The subject is, I this is where the story is. This is where the eyes will be. The rest is just mood and feeling.
Yeah.
And you'll have a sense of exploration studying the frame. But 95% of the time, the eyes will be on the subject. So the subject needs to be beautifully lit, or disturbingly lit, lit to support the story. So first, you need to understand where the subject is going to move within the environment. This is really important because if you're lighting for one spot, like the perfect lighting in one spot, that's good to know. If the person's moving around a lot, then you really need to understand how to light them optimally for the range of motion that they're going to have. So you have to talk with the director about the blocking, if there's a director, or you and the actors need to do the blocking yourself. It helps if there's some rehearsal, because if there's not, it'll usually change if there's a lot of movement. Sometimes the approach is to let the actors roam, in which case you may not be able to light as optimally because you have to cover the bases and be a little safer.
Right.
If you know where they're going to be, then you can light it perfectly. I mean, and these are different styles.
And they don't have to be lit perfectly every moment of their movement, right? That's, I think, a big mistake a lot of people think, that's got to be nailed.
In fact, it's impossible. I mean, if you watch anything, if you watch the best lit things.
Yeah.
However, you will see in really good lit things, they use the off moments effectively. Sometimes walking through a shadow back into another light can have dramatic impact. It can actually enhance it. So as they move, where are the primary lights and where do they sort of fall out of the primary? And is that moment of less than optimal light interesting? Is it effective?
Right.
If they're constantly lit exactly the same as they're moving, that's kind of boring. And it's also not very realistic because the way environments are lit, it's from individual sources.
Right.
And those sources will cast light differently depending on where you stand. So that's another good point, is typically the way lighting is done in an environment is to try to imitate what would be real. So with this school of thought or with this kind of production, a realism, you want to think, all right, lights, are they typically on the ceiling? Are they typically from lamps? Are they from windows? Where are the light sources that would be logical in this room? Alternately, it is totally legitimate to do something more unrealistic. This is art, so you can make it special. You can make it different. If all the lighting sources would logically be on the ceiling, you could still light at eye level and just give it a more studio, a more stylized kind of look. This is done a lot with photography, with a lot of fashion photography. They're not motivating the light based on the logic of the fixtures in the room. They're motivating the light for this dramatic impact and just what is the best, what gives it this glow, what fills. You don't want the lights too high or the eye sockets can go dark. I mean, this could be a style. The Godfather was famous for having dark eye sockets and very toppy lighting.
Right.
But I typically like to see the eyes. The eyes are where most of the story is. And I particularly like to see a little catch light. Catch light is a little spark of white that you see in the eye. You can, I don't know if you can see it on me now. I can see it on you. You have a little spark of a white there from the light source. It gives life to the person, to the eye. And when you're looking at a face, you're usually looking at the eye. That's where the audience is connecting with the subject. That's where you're watching to understand their emotional state. When lighting the environment, so you want to see what is in the environment that's naturally giving off light. So this could be windows, this could be lamps, it could be a candle, it could be a fire in a fireplace. It could be reflective surfaces, which, a polished concrete floor would reflect light that's not in the frame, but it will actually, because it's reflective, it's bouncing light, and it will radiate light. So that's something you want to study and be aware of. There are, panels that are backlit. You see these in nightclubs or bars a lot, restaurants. hotels, sort of these high-tech designs will have panels with backlighting that gives off a light. That's so that's important to factor in and study as you're evaluating the existing light in the room. TV screens and computers will give off light. And a couple things. One is how bright these are and how well they balance with each other, because you want them to be reasonably balanced. You don't want one just blowing out with another one barely perceptible. We may take bulbs out. We may put bigger bulbs in. We may, if it's a backlit, we may change the source that's lighting it from behind. We try to balance it out so it has the mood and the consistency that'll record well with the camera. And then another big point is the color temperature of these. Computer screens often don't have the nicest color tint, but sometimes, and that might be good though. It might be sort of an ugly office setting that you're depicting. Tungsten lights tend to film really nicely, and most lamps are tungsten. Candles, of course, are even warmer than tungsten. Flames give a very rich gold, which can be beautiful. But you want to make sure they balance in a way that you like. Now, mixing light, I think, is great. Different colors, and you can talk about more of this in the key light area as well. But even different temperature light on the face can be really great, and it gives it an additional sense of depth. But when you're building the environment, and the environment is so much about depth and texture, different tones can be really nice. Other times you might want consistency, but the point is make it deliberate. Think about it and look at what the colors are and what the relative brightnesses are.
Would you ever light with one color temperature, as a key, and a different color temperature as a kick, or as some sort of a black backlight glowing and stuff like that? Would you, or is that off? Is that like a taboo for you?
No,
I know it's taboo for some people.
It's against the rules, but there are no rules. So you learn the rules so you can forget them. But it's important to know them because, yes, there are situations where I would do that, where one can do that. Not usually. The bigger problem is, the reason you need to know the rules is because if you break them accidentally, it's going to look like, there are ways to break them where you're crafting it and using it. Mm-hmm. And there are ways to break them where you just you look like you don't know what you're doing. Mm-hmm. So if you have a person lit with daylight by a window and the entire background is yellow, and there's no nuance and no blending of the two, there's no overlap, it's gonna look cut out. The subject may look like they were just rotoscoped and green screened into it. Right. You need to have some kind of blending, so some spill from one to the other, some overlap is nice. But you can do anything, just make sure it's deliberate and make sure it's enhancing. It's helping either the story, or it's helping the mood, or it's helping. But mixing light on the subject is great. And of course, it depends on the context. If you're going for this realism with clearly logically motivated lights, you probably wouldn't do that. But in a fashion video, a music video, you would do it all the time. Mm-hmm. You do it with bright red and green, right?
Yeah, right.
We're not talking daylight and tungsten, we're talking gelled lights. Right. You can do anything, but you don't want it to look accidental. You don't want it to look like a mistake. And if you know what the rules are, you'll avoid things that look like mistakes and take it beyond just that accidental level so it looks deliberate.
Yeah, it feels to me like you're tying it back to the beginning of investigating what's the mood, what's the piece, discussing with the director. All that's going to then make you decide, on the colors that you want.
And it's a big question is this, are you going for a stylization, or are you going for pure realism? Interesting. And even in a real environment. Now, okay, if you're going for pure realism, you might do something artificial to make it look more real. So let me explain that. Because your eye is really good at adjusting to color temperatures. The camera is not. So things your eye would adjust to, the camera won't adjust to. So if you have a person by a window with daylight and a background that's tungsten, your eye is going to make that look all natural and consistent. It's not going to look boldly yellow in the background and you're going to look really blue next to the daylight. But a camera will make that difference very noticeable. So in a case where you want it to feel natural, like the eye typically captures it in a real environment, you probably would either warm up the window light by one way is just put a big roll paper of CTO to give it that warm
Yeah.
tungsten kind of
Yeah.
feel, to match the back. And then you set the white balance to be white. So it doesn't look yellow. It doesn't look tungsten. It looks like normal white light. Um, or the opposite, you might change bulbs in the background to make them daylight
Yeah.
temperature bulbs
Yeah.
to match the front light. That's going to feel more natural to what your eye is used to seeing because your eye is really good at adjusting. But cameras will not adjust and will actually make the differences seem more obvious.
Yeah, yeah. I
So,
say the same thing also about dynamic range. You
mhm.
know, our eyes just do. You know, it's unbelievable at seeing all the different
Yeah,
levels, but the camera isn't. So you have
yeah,
to really, you know, pay
yeah.
attention.
Now, if you're outside at night in a city, you're going to get all kinds of different colors bouncing everywhere. And it's
Yeah,
great. I
yeah,
love that.
yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah,
but what's happening there is on the same person and the same subject on the same wall in the same areas, you can have different lights hitting. It's going to be clear that there are different colored lights. It's not going to look like one level was lit by a different source or different environment in the foreground. You don't want it to look like it was cut out and a green screen cut out.
yeah, yeah,
That's the easiest way to go wrong.
yeah.
If the subject is entirely lit in one color temperature and the background is entirely lit in a different, especially in the more predictable ways, that's not going to look good. It's just going to look like a mistake. But I find that if you're mixing within the same plane, within the same part of the distance from the camera, then it works really nicely. It gives it more texture and it gives it more depth.
And you know, I don't want to get us too off track, but this is such an important point. You know, skin tone. In
Hmm.
that craziness, how do you maintain a realistic skin tone?
Yeah,
Right?
this is a great question. This goes back to the key lighting. So why don't we
Yeah.
just,
Okay.
think of this as
Yeah.
the break. So jumping back to key lighting now. So a big factor when you're setting up the key lighting is the skin tones of the subject, and this is really important because this is what will make the coloring look natural and accurate or off. Now, if you're doing a stylized thing and everything's skewed in a certain direction, your eye will adjust to it. Like if it all has a blue cast or a green cast or the cyan is popular.
Right.
If everything goes together, then your eye will adjust. It'll feel like they fit together and it'll just feel stylized.
Okay.
But if the skin is off, but everything else is natural, it's just going to look bad.
Yeah.
And it's very easy to go bad. In fact, when I do color grade, I'll set the skin right. That's the first thing. And the rest is secondary. And if I have time, I'll do secondary adjustments to correct that. But different light sources will have different qualities of light. And they're going to, and the biggest way that plays out is how it affects skin tones. Certain lights are good for skin and certain lights aren't. Sometimes you have to use lights that aren't so great. So I use tungsten a lot. Tungsten's the least expensive light, so that's nice. They're the easiest to rent. The tungsten has the good quality of being really good for skin tones. It's a great light, a great quality of light. There's two problems. One is it's very hot, so that can be uncomfortable. And two is it's very inefficient, so it draws a lot of power for the amount it gives off. So
Right.
you're limited in terms of how powerful of a light you can use. But the quality of its light is fantastic. HMI is okay. That's not bad. I mean, I just love tungsten light. Fluorescents, if they're good quality fluorescents, like Kinos can be very good. LEDs are typically not so great. LEDs typically have a green tint to them. And you can put in some negative green filter, but it never really works. You're always wrestling with it.
Yeah.
And I mean,
I
negative
run. I
green
run
is
from the
basically
hills.
magenta.
I run
So
for
if
the
you're putting a
hills.
magenta filter on, I mean, magenta
Yeah.
never looks great
Yeah. Yeah.
on skin.
And you can do some
it
of this
gets
stuff in camera too. You can do some of this in camera, you know, but
sometimes, not
yeah.
always.
Okay.
Not if you're shooting raw. You know,
Interesting.
raw does do that. Although raw gives you flexibility later.
Yeah, sure.
And some cameras are better than others at giving you that flexibility.
Yeah, 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 yeah. But I don't. Even if you could do that, I don't like that because you're doing it for the whole image, right?
And then you're doing that. So if I had to pick, I'd get the skin right and let the rest fall off.
Yeah.
Because your eye will, again, adjust more to environment, but skin tone, it'll see it's wrong. We know skin tone so well. It's ingrained in our mind.
Exactly. Yeah, you can't cheat that. Yeah.
Yeah, you can't cheat that. So to the extent possible, get the skin tones right. And some cameras are better than other cameras at it. So this is part of the research in selecting cameras. It's great when you can test before a project the camera and the lighting sources and see how they interact, because different cameras will react differently to different lighting sources. The red is particularly bad in tungsten. That was the case previously. It's getting better with each new generation, but it's famously a camera that favors daylight. Um, whereas the Alexa is quite good in daylight. And it's sort of
The
loved
tungsten.
for
In
the
tungsten.
highlight roll off and just the way it deals with, and tungsten.
Yeah.
Because well, the Alexa is pretty flexible across the board.
Right.
But it's so good with the highlights. A lot of times where you get into trouble is the highlights, and where the highlight will roll into clipping. You start getting color fringing in odd colors. And so that's an issue of how the light source interacts with the sensor on a given camera. Testing's always good. Sometimes you don't have the luxury. So yeah, but those are absolutely important factors to consider.
Of the key light. Okay. So where were we with the key light? We were talking before about the the light, the eyes, and how much they speak to you.
Yeah, so I mean, personally, I like to make sure the light's low enough to get into the socket. Now, if it's illogical for a light to be low, now again, a factor of whether it's getting into the socket is both how high it is and how far away it is. So it's the angle. But if it's far away, first of all, lights that get further away get smaller. So closer lights, especially with some size, tend to be softer. And we'll get into soft versus hard in a second here. But positioning of the light, I like to get light into the eye sockets. Again, there are no absolutes, but generally it's more flattering. And just enhances that connection to the subject on the screen. I will fudge reality to get better lighting because I like just the impact that lighting can give you.
Yeah.
So to me, I don't feel an obligation to what's logical in the room. Others, and if you're a DP working for a director or a gaffer working for a DP, you need to talk to them about what their preference is. Do they want pure realism? Does everything have to be perfectly logical, or do they want the most radiant and most beautifully shaped light possible? Sometimes there are trade-offs between the two, depending on the environment that you're in. But these are discussions you need to have if you're working for somebody else. If you're doing your own project, then these are choices you need to make yourself.
And,
So
let me see if I just understood that correctly. When you say to be more realistic and logical, as opposed to more, I guess what we're talking about right today, the dramatic style, I'm trying to understand.
This could be the same thing.
Okay, so that's
by logical, I mean what's motivating the key light.
So if there's a window over there, I want the light
Is it a
coming from
window?
there.
Is it a lamp? Is it what is it? Like what would be if it's outside of the frame? Almost always.
Yeah.
Typically,
Right,
the key light's
yeah.
outside of the frame. And so if you're watching, there should be you should be able to say, logically, he's being if a viewer were to think about it, ideally they won't because it'll just feel natural.
Yeah.
Let's do the reverse. You don't want them to say, wait, where's that light coming from? They're in a
Right.
cave. They have one candle, but there's this big soft source off to the left. That could be just distracting, but it's also not supporting the story. So in a cave, you still need some light just so you can see. A candle won't light the cave. Generally, you'd want to just have just a general soft fill. You wouldn't want to have a very directional light from one side,
Yeah.
because that would give away that there's a fake light, a cinema light in the cave.
Yeah.
In a room, would it be an overhead light from the ceiling? Would it be the lamp that's next to the person? Oftentimes, you want to have the motivation of the light by a lamp in the frame, but it's not enough to light them, so you're going to cheat. And it's also typically not at exactly the right angle. You typically, say if someone's sitting in a sofa with a lamp to their side, and that's the logical source, but you want more wraparound. You want to see more of their face than a lamp that's just slightly in front of 90 degrees to them. So you're going to have a light off camera that's casting a light the same color temperature as the lamp, and giving you more control and more wrap to the front of the face. To the camera, to the viewer, it's going to look like that light is lighting them.
Right. It is
But
motivated
it's
still.
something that's better than what that light is actually doing.
Yeah.
Because you'd have shadow from here over typically with the lamp on the side. If you cheat it and light it, over here, so you get a little spill in the triangle under the eye. We'll get into the Rembrandt lighting in a second. It's just going to look nicer. It's going to be fake, but it still looks real because you have the motivation. You've matched the color. You've thought about how far you can get the angle to get away with it without it giving itself away.
Yeah.
Same thing with windows. You might want to get a little more wrap than the window has. You might want more punch
Yeah.
than either the window or the lamp has. And then you can fill it in, but you want to match. There should be a motivation for what the light source is if your objective is realism. If you're objective, if you're okay with a stylized, fantastical, it doesn't even have to be fantastical, just a slightly enhanced, a little more punch than real world, a little more big screen movie magic in the feel, or certainly fantasy, then you can just ignore that. You can just go to, although you still might think, you might do something in between too. So you need to be aware of what would logically be the light source, but you can do something that just is really more about style and shaping light.
And you mean that you could get away with the fact that the audience will possibly say, "Hey, that light, where did that come from?"
They could totally know it's artificial.
And it's okay because of the type of piece.
Absolutely. If it's the type of piece that lends itself to that.
Yeah.
If you look at a lot of fashion photography that's shot outside on beaches, they almost always have a strobe, a pop, and there's a glow to the foreground, to the person.
Yeah.
That's not the background. You have detail, you see the environment, but there's like this glowy pop. It's clearly artificial.
Yeah.
But it radiates light and it looks really powerful and evocative.
And the audience is okay with it.
Yeah, I mean it's better. It's hyper real. It's beyond realism, but it radiates. It's compelling just in its sort of glowing magic.
Yeah.
So yeah, again, it's what is the type of piece and what is it you're trying to convey? Is it realism? Is it stylization, or some kind of blend in between? But all this is legitimate, but it just needs to be deliberate.
Yeah.
If it's supposed to be real, think about what would really create that light, and then do the best version of that possible, but so that it looks like it's credible that true light source is casting the light.
Yeah.
Again, it doesn't have to be real. It just has to look credible.
Right. You can cheat, like you were saying. Just don't let it get to the point where...
Cheat.
Yeah, whatever it takes to make it look good and look real, as long as you didn't cross that threshold of where the audience would say, "What's going on here? Where's that light coming from?"
You always cheat. You just ask, how far can you cheat and still get away with it?
Exactly. Yeah.
Without giving yourself away. While still making it look good.
Okay, good. I think we beat that to a pulp there. Yeah.
Well, yeah, but it's important. And
very important. Yeah.
But then there's mood, character, mystery. Is it a bright, funny, happy? Is it a sci-fi that sort of it glows but is very bright? Is it a film noir? Is it a dark thriller? These are all factors in how you light your subject. Do you want to light the subject in a flattering way? Or do you want to give them a harsh light that really degrades them? Soft light versus hard light. This is a really, really important factor. Soft light is more flattering. It's more gentle. It fills in wrinkles. It makes the skin look smoother. It just gives you a nice quality, it reflects well on the subject, and it's especially with older actors or models. Soft light is more forgiving. Hard light will show every crack and crevice. A hard light, the difference is if you have wherever's casting the shadow, if there's a hard line between the shadow and the bright area, that's a hard light. If it gradually goes from shadow softly into highlight, into brightness, that's a soft light. Yeah. So that gradual flow from shadow into light is much more flattering. But again, some stories call for a hard light that's harsh. You see more hard light even in fashion photography because you have models who have perfect skin, perfect bone structure, so they can take it without looking bad, but it still gives it a more aggressive edge. So these are all choices. But the way you create soft light is a large source. Right. You have the larger the source of the light, the softer it's going to be, because you have the center part coming through, illuminating, and then you have this wraparound from the wider edge of the large source, and it will be softer and less light coming as you get further from the center toward the edge, and that will just gradually fill gently and filling less and less as it gets to the end until it's in shadow. A hard light is a very small source. If you just take a bulb by itself and shine it on someone, that's very hard. Or the sun, because it's so far away. It's big, but that's again a factor. How far away it is affects how big it is relative to the source. So a big source is going to wrap around. A small source will have no wraparound at all. So it's going to have a hard edge. So if it hits your nose in the line on the other side, between where the light spills over and where your nose is blocking it, will just be a hard line. Again, that will also play out in every wrinkle and crevice and texture on the face.
Yeah.
So the skin will look rougher, and it will just look more abrupt and harsh. Again, that could be good in certain contexts.
I have to give you very big props on the way you explain that soft light with the big source. You got the bright light in the middle, and slowly it's getting less and less punch as you're getting to the sides of that. That's the best explanation I've ever heard of a soft light, and now it makes sense to me why it has the effect that it has on the subject. Now, I mean, I always knew. What kills me is when somebody wants to just put a little diffusion in front of the light, and they say, "I made it softer." You didn't do anything. You have to make the source bigger.
That's a great point. I get it. You wouldn't believe how many times I get into that conversation. I said, you didn't just make it softer.
Yeah.
What that does, though, that does do something. What that does, what they confuse for softness, is it turns it from spot to flood.
Yeah. Okay.
So if you have a light that's this size, and there's nothing on the front, and you shine it, usually this is in a reflector of some sort. You know, even if it's an open face, it has a little reflector dome, and you shine it, it's gonna onto the floor, just a blank white wall, or a wall. It's going to have this sort of circle and this spot.
Right.
It's like a spotlight. Then you put a piece of diffusion paper over it. If the diffusion paper is the same size as the reflector, it's not going to make it softer, meaning it's not going to more gently roll across the face because you're not getting more wraparound. I mean, to a very small degree, because you've basically taken the bulb and the reflector were not radiating the same amount of light, and now they are. But we're talking about such a small reflector that that's not actually going to make much of a difference. But what it is going to do is it's then going to spread the way the light comes out, because the light's not coming from deep within a recessed area in a reflector that's curved to focus it, but all the light's going to be radiating out from the diffusion paper, and it's going to go in all directions.
Yeah.
So you won't have a spot, you'll have a flood.
More of a flood. Yeah, interesting.
But that's not creating soft light on a person.
Right.
That's just, now it could if it starts bouncing off walls and that starts filling. But in terms of the harder soft light from that source, a big source is going to give you a wraparound, a gentle wraparound, whereas a hard light is going to give you just hard edges and light coming from only one precise direction. Yeah. So that's a factor.
Right.
The other factor in assessing how the light interacts with the subject, it's true with all light, but particularly matters with the key light, is how close or far away it is, both because close or far will affect the size and therefore affect the softness, but also how close or far it is will affect the fall off, the fall off from the light into the shadow. Now, if a light is very close to a subject, let's say it's right in front of me, let's say it's 10 inches in front of me. I guess we should do maybe centimeters.
Yeah. This is worldwide. This is international.
Get into that. Either way, it's 10 units in front of me.
Yeah.
But very close. The light will be you'll have the light at a low level if it's this close, because it's going to be bright, right? So it'd be a lower level light, or dimmed down or scrimmed down. The light will hit the face and then very quickly fall in the shadow by the time it gets to my ears, and certainly by the time it gets to anything behind me. It'll fall off dark quickly. Mm-hmm. If the light is 100 units away, then my ears and my face will be lit the same. Because
great point. Yeah.
The percentage difference, if it's close, the percentage difference between the light to my nose and the light to my ears is big. Yeah. I mean, it could be double if the light's this close.
Yeah.
Then the difference to here and here, this is twice as far away.
Right.
If it's 100 units away, the percentage difference between the light to my nose and the light to my ear is essentially the same.
Yeah, amazing.
So when it's further away, it's going to be brighter, and the nose and ear will get the same hit of light, essentially.
Yeah.
When it's really close, the power will be lower. The nose will get the same exposure. We're adjusting the brightness so that the face in front gets the same exposure. But by the time you get to your cheek, it's going to start getting darker. By the time you get to your ear, it'll get even darker. And that can be really nice.
Yeah.
Have quick fall off. Because it'll give three-dimensionality.
Wow.
To
so you can get
face.
soft light while getting a quick fall off.
And get close. And there, a smaller light close is a bigger light.
Yeah.
So if you get, a small chimera, for example, close versus a bigger chimera far, you're going to get more three-dimensionality and depth with the smaller chimera close.
Interesting. Wow. Love it.
Yeah, so that gives it shape. And really, one of the big things I go for in lighting my subjects is a sense of depth and three-dimensionality. Um, this is this gives a texture and it gives almost a tactile quality to the face. Um, Flat to me tends to be boring. I tend to like depth. There are times where flat's appropriate, and there are people who love flat, but I tend to like depth. And depth comes from lighting sources that are closer. Now, if you get too close, it could get really spotty and spectacle, or you'll have more spectacle on the cheeks, on the nose. Sometimes that's good. Sometimes it's too much. You find the right balance. Positioning the light is key, both in terms because that's essentially just the closest points and the rounded points, like the tip of the nose or
Right.
tip of the shoulder. Often will get a highlight glare. Sometimes that's good. Sometimes it's too much. If that's too much, back the light off a little bit further away, and that'll soften, and it'll give more fill to the other areas. Of course, when you're backing it further away to maintain the same exposure, you're also brightening it. But these are factors that impact the shape of the subject. I mean, you're actually going to change the sense of depth. You're going to change the bone structure in a way and how it portrays itself.
Yeah.
Because we don't see objects. We see light reflecting off objects. It entirely determines how we interpret it, how the light hits it and bounces off of it.
Yeah,
So-
I'm blown away right now. I haven't given enough emphasis in my lighting on that playing with the distances.
Yeah, my background is in photography prior to becoming a cinematographer, and I did a lot of beauty photography. And beauty is, makeup, cosmetic, ads, hair products, and it's a lot of tight work, very close macro work often on faces. So you really see that. It's also, you see a lot in tabletop product photography, where it's really obvious. A 2-inch difference is
Really?
a very
Wow.
big difference in how close or far it is when you're doing macro photography.
Yeah,
So it really makes a difference. When you're doing in big spaces, you need to make bigger changes for it to be noticeable, but it is a factor how close it is.
Tying
And-
this a little more closely to the cinematic, dramatic lighting goal that somebody may have, would you say that they would probably want to get it in quite tight so that they get that quick fall off, so that we get that depth, and in other words, so that we get away from everything being evenly lit,
Yep.
right? So that's a big piece of this equation. It sounds
For
to me.
sure, yes. For the kind of lighting I do, which is dramatic, it's moody, it's mysterious. Those are qualities I want in lighting. Typically, I typically go to projects that
Yeah.
benefit from that.
Yeah.
So that, it's not the one lighting for all projects, of course. But if you want this dramatic, cinematic,
Yeah.
mysterious, not even necessarily mysterious, but just it has mood and atmosphere.
Yeah.
This kind of lighting will bring that to the project.
Yeah.
For
Okay,
sure.
Amazing.
And
That's
then the other factor is with key lights, as with environmental lights, how you shape the light. And there are a lot of ways to shape the light, but I will typically use a lot of snoots and grids. A snoot is a narrow cone that creates a small beam of light. I wouldn't typically use a snoot on a subject with a key light because that would make it very hard light. But for accent lights, when you can't stick something behind furniture or pop it in, you have it off camera, but you have a narrow little beam to create an accent, a little splash of light. If you have a whole wall that's solid, I like to have gradients anytime there's a big solid area. And a little splash that rolls off into a shadow gradient is going to be nice. But on almost everything, if there's environment, if it's a tight shot, it doesn't matter. But if it's a big shot, I have grids on almost everything. I have grids on my big soft boxes. I have grids on my reflectors. Grids prevent light from spilling. So grids will give you control. And preventing light from spilling prevents that even flatness and lets you have these rolling shadows within. So if I have 6 lights and they all have grids, I could very precisely place pop here, pop there, pop there.
Love it.
And even on the bigger source, if I want a big soft source, I'll still have a grid on it on the subject, so it doesn't spill all over into the background, washing out the rolling shadows that I've already created. So
You took. I mean, that was exactly where my mind was going. Is like, how are we going to keep it off of this set from lighting?
Yeah.
So lots of
there are
grids.
2 ways. One is grids,
Uh-huh.
and even on the biggest chimeras, or the biggest sources, they tend to have grids that you can buy, and I tend to choose lighting sources that have grids. If they don't, I'll go for something else. But I do use a lot of chimeras. There are even if you're using the big 8x8 or 12x12s, I mean, when you're going that big, that's generally ambient fill or filling the whole area, but they do have textured, gridded materials that will make it more directional and less of a spot. So there is some control over that. Um, so I mean, that's fundamental, is just controlling that bouncing all over the place. Then the other thing that you may or may not have control of, but if you do, separating the subject from the background
Yeah.
will also prevent spill on the background.
Yeah.
Sometimes you don't have the luxury, but sometimes you do. And if you can pull them further away, then you can light them one way and light the background differently without the two competing or fighting with each other.
Right. That's a big one, and definitely not to be overlooked. That saved me a few times, really big, when I was first getting started, and I had somebody much more advanced than me helping me out. He said, "Just pull them away, big time, and then there you go. You can light them, and then you won't be." Because I was always complaining that I'm trying to light, and then I got this ugly white wall behind me, and I'm lighting the whole white wall. So
well, and this is particularly important. Again, this isn't really the focus here, but green screen. When you're lighting someone for green screen, it is a factor of lighting for cinema. Often you will shoot green screen. The key is to not have green spilling on the edges of the person.
Yeah.
And if they're close to the background, they will have green spilling.
Yeah.
Separating them from the background gives you a cleaner edge.
Right.
Of course, it means you need a bigger background, which can be a challenge. You're always fighting with how big is your background. But pulling them away lets you control the light on the subject more precisely without affecting the background. Exaggerated in green screen. But even if you're in a place that has red backgrounds, you don't necessarily want red spilling onto the skin tones. That could throw your skin tones off.
Yeah.
Separation is nice. Plus, separation, of course, with the lens will blur the background more. It'll just give you more. Your eye will go to the subject more if you can give them some depth. In any scene, you want depth. Anytime you can have layers, we talked about this earlier. You have layers. That gives it more depth and more visual interest. If the camera moves at all, it exaggerates that. And you'll notice that more if you light each layer separately.
Yeah.
And it's easier to light each layer separately if there's some space, the more space there is between each layer.
Right. It's creating visual interest. There's geometry in the scene and etc. As opposed to just a big old flat, nothing behind you.
Exactly.
Yeah. That takes a while, I think, to start to pick up on those things and to see it. But good points.
Yeah, for sure. So that's basically how I walk through. So then I'll go, if the environment has lighting within it and we're using that ambient, then I'll start with that. If I'm building everything from scratch, I'll start with the key light. But either way, then I go to the other one, and then you want the two to balance together and to fit together. That's lighting pretty much.
Yeah. Okay. There was so much information there.
And the fundamental point is, understanding light and how light works is what we do, at least on the lighting side of cinematography. And you can study that and learn that anywhere. You're on the subway, you're at a restaurant, anywhere. Look at faces. Look at how the light in that environment is affecting those faces. How is it rolling across? How are different types of light competing? Which one's winning? How are they mixing? Where do you find qualities of light and shadows that you like, and where does it look terrible? Think about where terrible lighting might be useful. What kind of story would that be useful for? Think that, that's horrible. But if we had it in this kind of story with this kind of scenario, that would actually complement the story.
Yeah.
Think about how to make ugly things useful and effective and a tool. Everybody always goes for beautiful lighting, and beautiful lighting is great. I love it. We all love it.
Yeah.
But sometimes ugly lighting is a powerful tool as well. And then when you see light that is just gorgeous, it's like so beautiful, think about what qualities are making it beautiful. What is it? Is it the color? Is it the softness? What is it? And what is creating that? And how could I recreate that on a set, in a shooting situation? Really always be looking at light, studying light, thinking about light. You'll learn so much just by walking around and paying attention. We're surrounded by light. Everything has light. So study that. And really, if you want to study artists who use light so deliberately, look at painters. Because painters are creating it from scratch. Photographers can get lazy. Many craft it and think about it, but something's gonna happen when you push the button. But painters have to create every type of light in there. Everything is deliberate. Nothing is accidental when you're painting. Um, and if you especially look at the masters, which I love, Rembrandt, Caravaggio, there's a type of lighting called chiaroscuro. If you like dark dramatic lighting, look up chiaroscuro. That is the classic painting approach to this really dark dramatic. And what the qualities that these works of art have is these rolling shadows. It's not all shadow, it's not all light, but it's rolling shadows. Tends to be their highlights are midtones. And that's sort of that oil painting quality. And then the shadows are dark, are shadows.
Say that last part again and explain it.
If you look at the classic
Yeah.
paintings, particularly in the chiaroscuro style,
Yeah.
which is Rembrandt and Caravaggio, the brightest points in the picture
Yeah.
would be midtones on a histogram or on a waveform.
Ah, wow. So it's really
There's no like highlight.
Gotcha,
50%
Yeah,
is the
yeah.
brightest, is where the faces are. Usually it's the faces that are the brightest, possibly a piece of clothing or a white piece of paper, but generally it's the faces. And that's usually about 50%
Wow.
of the lighting scale.
Yeah.
So if you want that look, that's where you want to be exposing and lighting the exposure for. There's this argument that you should shoot to the right. This is bigger in photo circles, but I've heard it in cinema as well, that there's more data captured on the brighter end of the histogram. And that every darker stop actually captures less data. So you should actually shoot it without blowing out the highlights. Shoot it further to the right, so shoot it brighter, and then in post, push it back down. Perhaps there's a mathematical argument for this, but it never works for me. I've tried this, and I've tried capturing the way I want it in camera, and to me, it's always better capturing it in camera. Even if I'm throwing away data, as the mathematical argument makes,
Yeah, amazing.
I just find when you shoot it bright and try to push it darker, it doesn't get grainy. It just doesn't look good. It just looks artificial. And in some cameras, and when you're using a log curve, then it matters a lot because the log curve is compressing the brighter areas in order to save the highlights from blowing out. But if you get your skin tones, if your skin tones are lit so bright that they're in the curve, on the highlight curve, you're in trouble when you start grading because there's much less data. It's much more compressed.
Yeah,
So that I can pack more stops in to create the big dynamic range. You need to make sure the skin tones are exposed darker than that log curve starts getting really aggressive at the top, because the log curve is designed to save like a lamp post or the sun in the background from blowing out and to gently roll it off as it does. But if your skin tones get in there because you overexposed your foreground, when you unpack that, it's going to not have the information it would have typically in the more robust, lower, darker part of the curve.
And some people who are listening might think, "Man, that's too technical. That's getting like too into it." But these are the subtle differences between an image looking filmic. Well, we use the word filmic, but I think we all understand what we mean. That film look, and that big kind of movies that we're trying to emulate, and video. Wouldn't you agree that these are the
Absolutely.
little
Absolutely. Well, a lot of this is emulating film, literally.
Yeah, right.
Because we do like how film looks.
Yeah.
In some ways, I'm not like one of these people that is only interested in film. I do love film, but in some ways we're forgetting the problems film had, and we're romanticizing it.
Sure.
The pictures we have today look
Amazing.
better than film.
Yeah, they're amazing. Yeah.
When done at its very best.
Yeah, sure.
But we can learn by studying the great paintings, by studying the great films.
Right.
Look at how light works on film. Look at the classics and how did they light that? When you watch movies, think about how did they light that? Where is the key light? Are they using the actual ambient light in the room? Are they enhancing it? Does the angle of that lamp really wrap around this far? Or are they supplementing that?
Yeah.
You'll never watch movies the same, but you'll learn from everyone you watch.
Right. So I want to recap, like in a sentence or two, the overall approach that you use, and that I think is anybody who's at your level is doing it. Is that you're looking at the environment, probably lighting the environment first. If I would say that's for the most part.
If there's an environment that has
elements,
light within it, lighting elements inside of it.
Yeah.
If I'm lighting from scratch, Like if I'm on a stage and we're building everything from scratch and there won't be lamps and candles and fireplaces, I will light the key light first. I'll light it for the subject, light it for the key, and then I'll build in the back with snoots and grids and whatever I need to
because you have
fill
full
in.
control over that.
Then you
That's
have
why.
control.
Yeah.
You're not matching. But if you're dealing with practicals that are already in the room,
Yeah.
practicals meaning lamps and things
Well,
that
there might
are
not be practicals there, like you said. You might be placing things in, to highlight, right? That's still under the
Yes.
same category.
But if I can use brighter lights from off camera blasting in, if I can use my cinema lights to do that, then I'll start with the key,
Gotcha.
and then I'll fill that in later.
Gotcha,
It's
gotcha,
only
gotcha.
when I'm using a real location and I'm
Right.
using lights that are in the camera that
Right.
can only go so bright.
Yeah, so you
But
don't
for
have
me, that's a
control over
lot.
those, so you want to set that first.
Yes, but for me, that's most of what I do.
Yeah,
So
right,
that is
right.
growth.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
for many people, they won't do that at all. So again,
and then the other
understand.
point that I think you mentioned, and I'm recapping because there was so much info here that I want to make sure it doesn't get lost in it, is that you're purposely not lighting, broadly everything. You're picking and choosing little
Yes.
things to create little pockets of light, and more importantly, dark, so that the light
Well,
can shine.
When I'm doing cinematic lighting.
Yeah.
Now, to be honest, I have commercial clients and I shoot commercials, and sometimes you gotta just blast it
The
out.
whole place, yeah, right.
A lot of commercial clients just want it bright, and
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
the job.
Right,
But
right.
that's not the lighting that I love, and that's not the lighting that people respond to.
I
that people
agree.
Go,
That's the
wow, that
point.
was beautiful,
Yeah.
or that was scary, or that was
Yeah.
mesmerizing, or that was inspirational, even.
Yeah.
I mean, shaping light, giving depth to the subject, giving depth to the frame,
Yeah.
just has more impact, and it's more interesting to watch.
Yeah, to strengthen the point, just one last little tidbit that I heard that maybe you are familiar with, maybe you're not. Roger Deakins, I'm sure you've seen, has been recently called to, I forget the title they gave him, like he's basically DPing animated movies, right? And they bring him in as a consultant. Now,
Sure.
I'm pretty sure that wasn't an existent position even 5-10 years ago. I don't know when it came in. And I remember hearing, I really wish I had the source for this, that one of the first things he told them, he goes, "What are you guys doing? You're just lighting everything." You know what I mean? You have to, let's get some blacks going. Let's turn let's get things go. And that was the main thing. I don't say the main thing. I didn't sit there with him, but the point was that one of the
Wouldn't
things.
you have loved to?
Yeah, when I left to. One of the things that he was getting them to do is because don't forget these animators, they're basically the DPs, right? They're the cinematographers with behind a computer.
They're functioning as DPs, but their expertise is not as DPs.
Exactly. So one of the things that I heard that he brought to the table was, you guys got to let some things go into the darks, let things fall off, don't
Absolutely.
light everything, which is again
Yeah.
everything that you've been saying here.
Light is only interesting in contrast to the absence of light. So
Yeah.
you need to have areas that are not lit so that
Yeah.
the lighting means something and so that the lighting directs the eye somewhere.
Awesome,
Absolutely.
August. We could go on forever, but that was plenty. And again, I hope everybody got a lot of notes out of that and a lot of takeaways. I know I did. Just gotta say thanks again for bringing
Yeah,
it
well,
to us.
thank you. This was fun. I love talking about lighting, and I love the whole program you have here. It's such a well put together way to learn. So I'm excited to be a part of it.
One last thing that I really loved about this is that there was a lot people. This wasn't just a theoretical discussion on lighting. There was a lot of takeaways on how to go and implement, what your next shoot. So I'm going to end it right here, and I'm going to let everybody know, just like I say all the time, that all this discussion is all well and good, but you got to get out there. You got to put it into practice, and that's the only way to get better.
So
So
practice is the whole game for sure.
that's the whole game.
Trying,
All right.
experimenting.
There you go. You heard it from August, not just from me. I pretty much end all of my presentations with that. Go out and practice. And thank you for joining us, and we'll see you at the next presentation.